Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to get started in about 1 minute, and I am here. I'm Heather Larrabee with OfficeSpace, joined by Melissa Marsh, who is the founder and executive director of Plastarc, which is a leading consulting firm based in New York that's helping teams create powerful, purposeful workplaces for the future, and using data and human-centered design to do just that. So we'll get started here in about 1 minute, but we're so glad that you joined us. And I will repeat this a few times as we go throughout, but we would love for this to be an engaging, interactive session. So please do use the Zoom Q&A or chat feature. Let us know what's on your mind. We'd love to include you in the conversation. Thanks for being here. And while we're waiting for our guests to join, Melissa, you are somewhere fabulous. Tell us where you're tuning in from today.
Yes, I'm at the Cornell Urban Tech Summit, and the location is right in between Manhattan and Brooklyn, a little island called Roosevelt Island, which is a mix of residential and Cornell tech. And I can even show you a little view out the window here.
Love it.
So that is looking
Yes.
right over to Brooklyn. Pretty cool spot right here between those two locations, and such a great reminder of all of what is the built world around us and how much we can learn through data in that world.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing that and also for taking time away from the event and your work there to be with us. And I'm joining us here from Atlanta in Midtown, and I'm at an industrious co-working space. So I'm in a phone booth. And so these are kind of the realities of our modern workplace, and we're going to talk about it. So again, if you're just tuning in, welcome. Plastarc and OfficeSpace have joined forces to bring you people, spaces, and data, the 2025 Playbook for Hybrid Success. And I am so honored to be here with Melissa Marsh, who is the founder and executive director of Plastarc. We're going to talk about her firm and the work that they do to help change hearts and minds related to incredible workplace design and experience. And at OfficeSpace, we are a workplace management platform built for the future of work, helping teams adapt to hybrid and balance people and place in ways that keep humans at the center of everything, because in the end, that's how great businesses thrive. So please do stay tuned. We've got live Q&A throughout at the end of the session, but also please do chat in your questions to Zoom chat. We'd love this to be a conversation. So as we get started, just a little bit, we're going to start with our guests, with Plastarc on the right. So your mission, Melissa, you founded this company 12 years ago to make the world a better place, one workplace at a time. You have been driving workplace change with social science. I'd love to have you share with the audience more about how you initiated this mission. 125,000 employees have been affected by the work of you and your team, and you've published over 150 thought leadership articles. If you have not signed up for Melissa's newsletter, please do so. She's got some of the best thought leadership out there, also on LinkedIn. She is a very, very generous thinker, planner, and guide, right out on the horizon, helping guide us to the future of work, and has created over 50 global presentations and is one of the most popular and requested recurring speakers at CoreNet, WorkTech, IFMA, AIA, EDRA, ANFA. Welcome, Melissa. How did you get started? Where was the dream of Plastarc born?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heather. Really a pleasure to be here and always enjoy the conversations with OfficeSpace and yourself. So Plastarc really came to be, I describe our work as social research and people analytics for the built environment, really offering a human capital layer to real estate decision-making at all scales, whether that's site selection, location strategy, architecture, interiors, smart buildings, and smart building products across all of those scales. My work initially, undergrad was political science, graduate work was architecture. Learned in the beginning of my architectural education that the number one energy leak in buildings is human behavior. We open the doors when they're supposed to be closed. We override the solar shading system because when it clicks on and off, it annoys us. We leave the taps running. We just wreck buildings. And so that really led me to want to focus on the human operating systems so that we can bring buildings and people better together. I practiced that initially through different architecture firms and consulting firms in my early career. And then I realized that I didn't feel that any one organization was doing exactly what I wanted to do and what I thought needed to be done in bringing people data and architecture and urban design, smart buildings all together into one place with a real quantitative and qualitative research focus. So I did it myself, and that's what brought Plastarc into being.
I love it. And let me ask you one question unplanned, which is, what would you say in the last 2 years or so has given you the most energy or the most joy or inspiration in terms of maybe a change or a shift in a positive direction that you can see through your work? Is there something that really is captivating or motivating you as you're helping guide teams through such massive change?
Well, it's always a great opportunity for work-life balance. So I would say that my 3 kids who are now all in high school is one of the things that gives me pleasure and delight. In the work world, though, I think one of the items is that in 2020, with that scary moment of COVID that then persisted through probably for many organizations about 8 months of not knowing what's going, sorry, 18 months of not knowing what's going on or the future of their space or the safety of their organizations. A tremendous amount of technology was invested in. Some of that technology might have been invested in so that we could know how many people were in our buildings, or so that we could monitor people's health and safety, or we could know what was going on in parts of the organization that might be distributed for us, or investing in technology in people's homes. So many of those things were done for tactical or practical purposes, but they have meant that we, as an industry, as a built world, invested in people-based technology as had never been done before. So we really accelerated the smart building platform. First out of need, but now one of the things that brings me delight is data, and so we've got tons more data than we might have had otherwise.
I love that. And that's a great segue into OfficeSpace. And so, for those of you who are joining us from the Plastarc community, OfficeSpace has been serving clients since 2006 and helping them flexibly manage the workplace. And we started as a space management solution. And in the period that Melissa, you just described, we continue to innovate and have been founder led. And so, creating things to help teams manage all of the uncertainty of COVID. And so bringing folks back into the workplace safely, doing things like desk hoteling and desk booking and like flexible space sharing, and on the journey goes. And we serve over 1,600 clients worldwide. We've got 350,000 monthly users. Over 100 million square foot of commercial real estate is managed through our platform. We're really honored to be considered a top workplace experience application. And every day we have to earn that, right? And the experience of our users is the most important thing to us, and helping them adapt to the changes in the workplace. So that's a little bit about OfficeSpace. And we were connecting with Melissa at IFMA in San Antonio this fall. And as you said, you are passionate about data, as are we. This has always been a core tenet of our platform and our solution. And so we're going to talk a lot about that throughout our time together. So as we start a new era of workplace design, trends that you should know. So I'm going to tee these up, and Melissa, we're going to talk to you about the way in which you're helping clients bring these to life. So first principle that we would like to share with the group is rethink our mandates, and we want to embrace culture. And so we all see news articles probably every week right now with different mandates around hybrid policy or return to office. And we can feel the tension that's inherent in this, and we can see when teams are doing it well and when they're fumbling. And so, Melissa, what's your take on rethinking mandates, and why must we embrace culture?
Yeah, so it's not either or. I would say that's more of a suite, you might consider, of different ways that we're able to manage people and organize our space. So I think that for a long time, we've been kind of seeing this this trickle or this cascade of different organizations having that mandate. In the previous 5 years, we had some mandate waffling. I even checked in with a colleague who was recently at a conference, and she said that there was an enormous debate at this conference over mandate or no mandate. And I think we should really maybe step back from that slice of the conversation and focus on a couple different things. One is we've always known that when people are in an environment, that the greater density there is in that environment, the greater likelihood there is that people are going to interact with one another. It is true of cities and the economic performance of cities as they grow in density. It has been proven since the 60s and 70s and early social metrics showing that people who had reason to cross each other's paths in the physical environment were more likely to have a connection. You can even see it in some social stats, which for those of us who may have sat next to people in our alphabet in the same part of the alphabet of our last name, still have connections with other kids and adults from our same last name section or category. If we are where we are going to invest in people and space, one of our goals should really be density, interconnectivity. So the same point as ever before is that we want to bring people together and maximize that potential for interaction. Whether we're bringing together people once a year for a phenomenal retreat, or once a week, or once a month, or every single day. So when you have that in-person experience, it's about density and it's about that desirability. No one likes a party without any other people at the party, except for maybe a couple true introverts. So that's one slice of it. I think the other slice of it is that while some organizations may have a mandate to return to office, while some organizations may decide they're done with the physical footprint and they are going to have a completely different strategy, I think we can add some sanity by really thinking of it as a benefit. One of the things that an organization has in their toolkit of different ways to connect with their employees, and that even before 2020, there were many organizations that had hybrid policies or telework policies, or even were work where whenever, however. So there's just a lot more organizations that have an opportunity to choose that option. And so every company needs to know that their employees have options from an employment perspective. And I think if we view it from that angle, it might help make the conversation more rational.
And I love that. And this was something that, as we were preparing for our time together, it really, really struck me. And I discussed this with my team today. And what you had shared about this, hybrid workplace, or whatever the workplace policy is, that actually is an official benefit that employers
Mm-hmm.
can offer employees. And we see in the data that this is the second most important benefit employees are seeking in 2024 after their pay. So it is
Mm-hmm.
really remarkable, the mind share that is dedicated to this benefit. And something that my team talked about this morning, Melissa, and hearing your feedback, is that this is also one of the only benefits that employers have given and then have removed, right, as policies change. And so I don't know that there's an easy answer for this, because one of the shared values that OfficeSpace and Plastarc has is this belief in continuous growth, continuous innovation, and iteration. And so what happens when you create a policy and extend a benefit that maybe through data has to change over time, and what's the right way to do that? And maybe there are examples of other benefits that we've extended and optimized, but we don't fully remove, and nor should we. So I don't know if you have any initial thoughts on that.
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, many organizations are pretty diverse, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of different roles within an organization. organization. And while if we're reading the headlines, we might see things like mandate here or telework forever there, et cetera. But probably what is more accurate is that organizations are identifying certain roles and responsibilities that work well in a remote model, certain roles and responsibilities that work well in a hybrid model, roles and responsibilities that work well in an on-site, on-campus, co-located model. So that's a piece of it, is to just kind of know that it is those different components. The other, I think, is more around the lines of, I wanted to comment on your point about benefits. I think there's two elements there. I would say we've seen benefit changes in a variety of ways. Like
Sure.
our health benefits seem to keep getting either more and more expensive or less and less benefit to the
Right.
employees. So I think benefits are always in transition. I remember early days when Amazon was a little tiny startup, they were credited as kind of inventing bring your pet to work because they didn't have the resources for having different ways of incentivizing either coming to the office or being totally unique. So we can always, in our world of employee experience, always be finding and researching new ways to serve up a unique experience to the customer. Um, and then I think there is that ongoing advantage of thinking about that workplace experience as a benefit to the employee. And as we talked about previously, you can't make adjustments without having some data or some reason or some rationale for doing it. And so having information both about how your real estate resources are being used, as well as knowing what people want, really provides an opportunity to continuously evolve those benefits.
I love that. And I think that's a great segue to our second point here, where we want to put employees first with workplace wellness. And so, in thinking about wellness and all of the dimensions of that and what that can mean both while in the workplace as well as at home, and how we can think about retaining some of the benefits and the privileges that knowledge workers especially had the privilege of accessing through COVID, that did improve work-life balance, that did, support community, family, physical health, mental health, and those types of things. So, how are you seeing teams do this well? And what should we be thinking about if we're at the beginning of this journey to really deepening our practice and our offering around workplace wellness with employees at the heart of it?
Yeah, again, the driver is data, and really whether that is the sort of survey style data and understanding what people want, what's going to be attractive to them, or otherwise. And I think we learned a lot about wellness on so many different levels in that 2020 moment in time. And certainly the health and wellness characteristics. It was an exciting moment that many business leaders who really didn't know much about buildings ever before were now talking about air filtration systems and levels of daylight and UV filters. And so I think we kind of raised the bar on organizations and people and individuals acknowledging the power of our physical environments and contributing to our health. You mentioned the Plastarc goal of making the world a better place through workplace. And that is really acknowledging that we spend a tremendous amount of our time, of our lives at work. And if you think about, 9 to 5, 5 days a week for the rest of your life, that's a big chunk of time. So I think that we want to think about the physical aspects of the environment. I often say that people are more like plants than than we might think about. We need fresh air, we need daylight. Even plants are healthier if you talk to them.
Yep. Yep.
So, and I think that maybe that brings us to the mental health and the mental health crisis that we've seen in this country and around the world. Some of it coming from separation. I thought it was fascinating. The cover of Harvard Business Review this month is "We're Still Lonely at Work," and so we kind of haven't solved for that feeling of social connectedness of that is so important to our lives and our livelihood, the mental health component. And I think there's a lot more work to be done there. But first and foremost, we can start by listening to people. And secondly, that one of the key data points is utilization. If people are happy and they're excited about something, they're going to be attracted to it, literally bees to honey. So we can judge a space in its effectiveness if people are choosing to use it on their own. And that's another way that I think that we'll get to the root of wellness, because people will seek out, whether it's daylighting or fresh air, that's going to come naturally to us. We're going to go to places that make us feel good.
I love that. And then, so when we think about investing in responsive spaces fueled by data and AI is a great tool if you are collecting data to help surface those insights more quickly and to help you understand and evaluate your spaces and your portfolio, especially if you're a larger organization, to see what is it about this space, or it can be a signal to then dive deeper into how is this space designed? What types of amenities did we create here? What are the finishes? Like, what's the flex
Mhm.
look like? What proximity do we have to amenities outside of our office in terms of green space, walking trails, etc.? Because when you're working on a global team, you might not know all of those different aspects of that particular location, but you can use AI to proliferate those best practices more quickly. But in your view, and AI is definitely also a really important shared principle between our two organizations, and the fuel of AI is data. And so if teams
Mhm.
haven't started kind of establishing their data ecosystem, where is the first place that you recommend that we start?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost is just the big picture of thinking systemically. You kind of incorporated that a bit in your question. But one piece of that is sort of acknowledging the sort of workplace ecosystem, which is all of these interactive parts and pieces, and having a systemic approach. I think that was also something that came of the moments of 2020, where it used to be that an organization was really only looking into relocation, or to an office renovation in a really critical manner, either when they had a lease expiration or when they ran out of space. And so it was always very reactive and often not very proactive or strategic in nature. And so I think that with this moment in 2020, many organizations have started to look across their locations as a portfolio of spaces, dialing up one thing, dialing down something else. And I think that that has been a real advantage, just sort of to the overall perspective. Um, and then the other component, which you suggest, is that of moving from sort of a data, an ad hoc data to a structured data world. And one of the things that I've always said is that we can't have AI in workplace if we don't first have intelligence in workplace. And you mentioned that IFMA presentation where our teams got to connect down in San Antonio, but that was really the founding principle of that presentation, was let's start with data, let's start with information. And that data and information is lots of things. It is exactly what you just mentioned, being able to compare location by location at a very detailed level. So where many organizations may know how much square feet they have in each location, do they know how many square feet are daylit in each location? Do they know how many square feet have, the image that's just on this slide now, have access to visual access to out of doors, visual access to greenery, visual access to plants? Do they know what portion of the spaces incorporate natural materials that might give us this sensation that we're more connected to nature or outside? So that with an AI sensibility, we might be able to layer in lots more features and aspects of our environments and have a much more refined lens, right? Almost like having a magnifying glass or microscope or telescope to see something that we literally couldn't see previously. Now we can, because it's easier to track the data and it's easier to go through volumes and volumes of data. But one other thing that we really need to have is a collective, for each organization, it's now more important than ever that you have a target of what success looks like. Because with more data, you could potentially just be churning more information and not getting closer to a desired future condition. So, first is that sort of quantitative lens and having the data. Next is having a direction that you're looking to move in. And then third, I think, is really making that actionable. And that's another way that AI can help, in that it can move from just having the data to knowing what to do about that data.
Completely agree. And our chief product officer, Andres Avalos, and his team, that is something that they're building as we speak. And so predictive analytics, that teams, just as many of us are enjoying tools like Chat GPT or Perplexity AI, where we can query and learn and receive recommendations. That's something that we're doing at OfficeSpace, so that you can query the massive amounts of data that exist in our platform for you to make meaning and drive recommendations. Um, so you talked a lot about many of the things that I think the research supports humans need, and it makes sense. And I like how you said humans are more like plants than we realize. And with 56% of our time as an average knowledge worker spent at an individual workstation, we want to be thoughtful about our designs. And at the same time, there's this sense that many of us also want to be able to work from home as well. So there's benefits to being in the office, there's benefits to being at home. And if you've got a structured work from home policy, there can also be business impact realized by helping teams have less commutes, pollute less when commuting, not having to pay for daycare because they don't have to have the before and after care, because they're living and working closer to their kids' schools and things like this. So, making sure that we are delivering value to employees and values to our organization, like through these thoughtful policies. But
Mhm.
again, where should we start when we're thinking about what's that right balance from even a financial perspective, where we invest as businesses or organizations?
So maybe could you point that question a little bit further in terms
Sure.
of where you're looking for, kind of how we measure return on investment, or what key people factors might go into that? Yeah, give me a little
I
bit
think,
more there.
yes, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how we should be thinking about return on investment within our workplace design and then also our workplace policy. And perhaps it's different for each organization based on their own goals. But maybe how should we think about measuring it? And then also, where do you start to see disadvantages if we prioritize a certain ROI that then creates a negative human experience? Where might those guardrails be?
Right. So as I mentioned previously, I still think that choice of occupancy is a really robust metric. One of the things that Plastarc has long been fascinated by is co-working environments. We jokingly say how much there is an opportunity to learn from environments where people pay to work rather than you have to pay them to get them to work there, which also comes down to this point of, the more um, the more dated viewpoint of workplace was that, everyone got a space and their job was to sit in that cube and get that task done.
Mhm.
And we in when we're in colleges and universities, we tend to have a tremendous amount of discretion and control over where, when, and how we work. If you're energized or invigorated by a cafe, then you have that experience. If you're super easily distracted, you can go to the library. If you need total control of your environment and you're not afraid of falling asleep, if you're too close to your bed, you could go to your dorm room, etc. So I think that we have to find ways that we bring that degree of personalization and an opportunity for people to have control over their environment. And that was something that the COVID moment of everyone working from home, they realized that they had a lot more control. Not you can't stop the dog from barking or the babies from screaming, but you can probably have a lot more control over your temperature, your lighting situation, your technology setup. And so, as people are back in the office in a shared environment, we need a way of serving up that customization. And we have so many more tools for doing that. I mean, think of when like Nike first came out with design your own shoe, and it was like so exotic. And now everyone's shoes are totally, how often do you see two of the same pairs of shoes in a day, right?
Yep.
So we're using technology to make something that is easier for us to deliver, but has a real experience of customization. This space is my temperature, it's my lighting level. And I think that's really where we want to see the investment going forward, and where there's this greatest opportunity for payoff and return on investment. And whenever we're using the technology to deliver something, whether it's used or not becomes that metric of return on investment. Both whether the space is used, can we amplify that? Can we maximize it? Can we get the most people in the same place at the same time so that we know we are having that human capital benefit? Or do we know that people actually took the opportunity to customize something? Did they dial the temperature up? Did they dial it down? So again, if it's being used, it's providing value and benefit. And that to me is the metric.
I love that. That is such clear guidance, and thank you for that. And so, in order to gather those insights to measure that type of ROI, you've got a great lineup of recommendations here. So, getting your workplace connected physically with your systems. So, your Wi Fi, your badge system, your sensors, your reservation systems, if you're doing desk and room booking or things like that. So, connected data ecosystems is something that we're really helping teams with today. You're
Mm-hmm.
helping teams
Mm-hmm.
with today. Understanding the unique needs of your team, like based at this moment in time in your organization's journey, what your unique culture is, and something that our COO and chief of staff led our team in is an analysis based on work out of Stanford of the evolution of company culture. And there's four kind of main types of culture that organizations tend to take on based on their
Mm-hmm.
kind of operating practices and their ethos. And, you can think about the differences between a Google style culture versus, let's say, an ExxonMobil style culture. And they're very different and they serve different purposes. And so, understanding the unique needs of your team, that's culture driven based on the organizational type that you have. And then
Mm-hmm.
accessing workplace patterns within the data. And also, you and I talked a lot about the importance of employee surveys as a qualitative data layer that we need to be including. So, not just data from our environment, but also data from our team members. And then a
Mm-hmm.
commitment to driving continuous improvement based on the insight. So having the hypothesis, testing, measuring, reviewing the results, and then optimizing and iterating from there. This feels like a really important kind of data flywheel that we need to, place ourselves on. But where do you see teams getting stuck?
I think that a while, say 10 years ago, we thought of change management as helping an organization get from point A to point B. Maybe that was getting more people to have a flexible work environment, activity based working. Maybe it was rebalancing the office to workstation ratio. Maybe it was innovating with a telework platform, or even getting new technology tools out there and getting people to use them. So change management often, or change leadership, or whatever you want to call it. Often it was about the change in question was about getting from here to here. And I think nowadays I've talked about the thinking systemically, thinking at a portfolio scale. Many people are familiar with Moore's law and the kind of constantly evolving and increasing speed of change, particularly in technology, but really in everything that we do. And I think the upshot of that is that going forward, we're not moving from point A to point B from a change perspective, but we're moving from static to continuously in motion. So
Mm.
we're getting unstuck, and the goal in the future should not be arrival at said destination or location, but building in a means of being dynamic and constantly evolving. So I think that's really what this, I liked your term, sort of data flywheel is all about, is that you make that initial investment. Until you make that initial investment, you don't have a way of consistently and persistently collecting information. You make a commitment to your organization that when you get information, you're going to act on it.
Yes, yes.
And then as soon as you do, you build you build trust. You build positive respect and positive reputation that you're going to do good things for your people with data. That makes your next change easier. And eventually you've moved from a static organization to a dynamic organization. And I think that's what really the goal should be in any of our real estate facility management, building design, employee experience responsibilities.
Completely agree. And even though as human beings, we often naturally have an emotional response to change, I do think, and what we hear from clients when we're working with them is that the data does help drive logical conversations. And we were in a workshop recently that talked about there's kind of three main types of communication that human beings need and or crave. And it's a social conversation, emotional conversation, or a practical conversation. And so the data can help bring us from what can be a really emotionally laden conversation around change to we're having a practical conversation, but there's still, room for that human experience within it. So this is something that we're super excited to share with the audience, and we all love trends. We want to see what's around the corner. You all do a tremendous amount of research in market with your clients, surveying the landscape. And so you've got four big predictions for the future of workplace experience, and we'd love to hear you walk us through those.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to say on the data side that the other thing that I think that has an opportunity to influence change management in data is having a collective understanding of where we are.
Mm.
And so often it's impossible to have a change conversation because there might be a shared conversation about the future, but we all have different understandings of current state. And so one of the things that we find is really powerful from a data perspective is that the data becomes a mirror. It's an opportunity to say, hey, this is what we look like. This is what we're using. This is not what we're not using. This is our sustainability footprint. This is where we're being, more or less effective. And before you have that agreement on current, it's hard to really go much of anywhere. You can't imagine getting in the car and you know your destination, but you don't know where you are.
Yes, I mean, and almost from a management consulting practice standpoint, let's establish the fact base. What fact base are we operating from? And then that can drive those other conversations and also ensure that we're not talking past each other, because sometimes that can also happen where we think we're saying something similar and in fact we're actually not. So
Absolutely. And I think that just on your next slide, there should be 4 images across, and that will give me an opportunity to answer. Oh, maybe
let's go.
just
There we go.
there, that one. Yeah,
Yes.
great. That will, I'll be able to answer your question with this. So, we've talked about the people experience, we've talked about the use of the data. Maybe something we haven't talked about much yet around multisensory is really that we also, in the last 5 years, have shown more and more how different everyone is from a sensory perspective. So we've talked about sort of serving up this more personalized experience. There's not just value in it being personalized because you're going to feel more connected and engaged, if you're in an environment that just feels like it's dialed into you, but also recognizing that we are so different from one another. We have different acoustic sensory levels, we have different visual sensory levels. Those are different from a physical perspective, from a mental perspective, and they change as we age.
Mm.
They even can change as we have different diets or change hormonally. So, some things that we see in that future work environment is that they are diverse, they're multisensory, and that we're using this data and information to serve up something that is both more equitable, but also more suitable to the neurodiversity that we know is common across our organizations. In the future, these are more service rich environments. So we've talked about coming together for a day, for a week, for a month, or every day. We long had, concierge spaces in our environment, but we see this growing more and more so that you have something that really feels like hospitality, and that again makes that person feel special. You mentioned the different cultural models. Something that I often refer to are different attachment models. We have different reasons why we work for the organization that we work for, and those models can help to inform the stickiness between individuals in the organization. We talked about using the stickiness rather than the stick, right? So the
I
mandate
love
is the
that.
stick, but focus on the stickiness for what's going to make people feel special in their environment. The next is purposeful programming. People are very happy to come in if there's a reason. So let's activate that space. Let's make it a destination. You wouldn't go to the theater if the theater show wasn't on. You wouldn't go there just to hang out in a great, amphitheater environment. You're going for the show. So let's really focus on what is happening in the space and also organize our programming around introverted and extroverted things. We do not all want meet and greets and socials and happy hours. We might want learning and training and deeper dives and one-on-ones and things that really serve up across who we are and what kind of social and learning we like from our organizations. And then finally is flexible, responsive design. And this is both the kinds of things that we've seen historically, but also using that AI generative to be predictive. So if we know how many people came in last Wednesday and we know how many people it came in the last time we had a snowstorm, if there's a snowstorm on a Wednesday, then we can have a prediction of what population is going to come in, and maybe dial down the energy or adjust the food order so that we're not being so wasteful, or use that information to be more connective, to pull people in, so that, for example, we're saying, hey, Heather, 3 of your friends are also in Atlanta. Why don't you get together? Here's a destination. Here's a place that you might consider going, almost so that it feels like some of the things that we might have in more of our social experiences as well. So bringing all of that data together, these are the things that we really think are going to be the pillars of a desirable workplace experience.
I'm so inspired by this work, and I could talk about just this slide for days with you. And something that I loved that you shared in another conversation that we had was the importance of taking inspiration from other industries. And you mentioned it here in terms of hospitality. I know you're also a huge proponent of adaptive reuse and kind of really creative things that I think many of us are going to be completely inspired by when we're reclaiming other spaces, repurposing them, and you can feel the spirit, you can feel the energy in those spaces, and also the human creativity that brings forth something new within them. You had a really neat example of that. But how would you guide folks who are maybe at the beginning of this journey to be thinking about where they can look for inspiration? So that's the first question. And the second question is, do you have examples of where this is being done well, perhaps even outside the commercial real estate context?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I think the first step of the deep dive is knowing what you're looking to accomplish. And for some, that is the customer experience, the employee experience. For some, it's maybe square footage, cost savings. Maybe it's a how low can we go, or it's maybe what does having a event or retreat space look like as opposed to having typical office space. So I think the first step is setting those objectives and figuring out what your gaps are, what your strengths and weaknesses are, and really kind of having that goal setting. It's November now, and I love the end of the year because it's always such a great time to say, what have I done well? What have I not done well? What do I want to do next year? Make those New Year's resolutions that we will all invariably break. But it's a great time to think of it and set the strategic objective. And then I think that once you set that objective, it's really the strategy is to be as creative as possible and to look way outside potentially our zone in order to establish that. I remember way back when I was in graduate school doing a business school case study on pay at the pump. Right. So just simply buying gas at the gas pump was something that did not exist before, and no one even thought that it needed to exist. And I believe the company was Shell, though it may have been another one. And they basically said, okay, what is our objective? Our objective is, or what do we know our customer wants? We know our customer wants speed. They actually went and sat at NASCAR and F1 races and sat in the pit zone and thought about their customer as the day-to-day commuter driver and what could they add to that commuter driver experience that was inspired by the pit zone. And that is one of the ways that they came up with the early version of pay at the pump, which initially was a key fob and then was a credit card machine. So I think that's an example of kind of thinking about what you're looking to accomplish and then looking outside your category in order to come up with fresh ideas. Little did the oil and gas consumer industry know that after they did pay at the pump and everyone was so happy, we would stop going into the store and stop buying
Right.
chips and all of these other things that they maybe wish they hadn't invented pay at the pump, but we're all, I think, thankful to have it. So of course, we all operate in an ecosystem. There will be good and bad impacts of our inventions, but that's really my advice is to take that really big picture, think outside of the box, and base it on what you're looking to accomplish, big picture.
I love that, and just tagging on to that, it also reminds me of the importance of observing things in the lived environment, and so being
Mhm.
there in the building and not only using technology to monitor and analyze how space is being used, but be in the physical space. And something you said earlier, related to ROI and are we seeing utilization and how are teams innovating and are they actually reconfiguring? Are they being drawn to or naturally creating their own space types? And if we're not there to also observe it, from a first party perspective, we're going to miss some of those magic moments that, kind of
Mhm.
create those workplace wow moments that matter. So I think that's really important. Um, I also wanted to ask you a question and kind of tag on to your diverse multisensory environment pillar or recommendation. And I'm curious, knowing that you do so much advisory work and also audit existing plans from various, corporate leaders, are you seeing employers promote this as a benefit in terms of job postings or things like this? I mean, how early or late are we in our maturity of helping promote this kind of thing to the next generation of workers, that this is something you can experience when applying and working for us and joining our team, that we're going to come into a supportive multi-sensory environment where we've got great design and purposeful programming for you. It feels like this is something that all people ops teams should really be attuned to, but where are we on the map with that?
Yeah, I would say generally we're not seeing people ops leverage great places in the job description. Certainly, I think we're seeing benefits, things like telework, or aspects of the work environment. Particularly, there's the amenities race. So sometimes you might see those things listed, flex if it's a possibility. But I think there's certainly tremendous room to grow. I would say, however, that I do see it on a articulation of culture message. So sometimes in a job listing, there's kind of two components. There's like a who we are, what we believe in, and then there's a this job would be your job. And I do tend more to see that alignment or the leveraging of aspects of the workplace that are maybe symbolic of organizational culture, things that they believe in, whether that's like, saying we have these natural materials or we have these particular locations, et cetera. So I think it is leverage there. I did want to go back to something that you had mentioned previously about the way we on when we talked about benefits, and we talked about retracting benefits. And one of the things that I've observed is that most organizations know exactly what benefits they're offering.
Yes.
And there's no, like, you don't ask about is there health care, and then it takes three different people to talk to, and like, no,
Yep.
there's like a package, it comes out, it's this done. I think many organizations have failed to be as explicit and clearly articulate about what is their workplace location, strategy, and how and what is that expectation. So some of that change management is on the organization of just simply not clearly articulating what is that expectation. And we know, I don't want to I don't want to say that employees are like children, but in many capacities, we will, continue to push until we get the answer that we want.
That's right.
So if organizations don't know what their proposition is, then it can be both confusing and it can almost incent some of that argument and that dissatisfaction. I do know we're getting close to time here, but we might have a
Yes.
couple of questions we want to
Yes.
get into as well,
I
Heather.
was just checking that. Thank you. Well, first of all, Melissa, thank you for your incredible thought leadership. I am truly inspired every time that I get a chance to talk to you and or read your research. So thank you, because you're a really, really generous guide for all of us. So we have some folks who've tuned in. So thank you, Laura Joe Felix. What is the most interesting, intriguing workplace benefit you've seen companies offer to bring employees back into the office?
Yeah, LJ, nice to see you. Thanks for your great question. One of the things that I think is maybe a challenge is that we've tended to focus return to office around food consumption. And I know I'm approaching the time in my life where I need to be as attentive to getting rid of calories as I am to consuming calories. And so I think that where we take opportunities for exercising together, getting over the hump of how awkward that may be for some, and really having anything from going on walks together to having yoga together. And maybe even forcing it to some extent. We notice how different it is between in saying, anyone who wants to come down, and then versus the population we might get when we say you, and you're expected to be here. You get a very different result. So if it would be weird to think that we could mandate people returning to the office, but that we wouldn't mandate them to come to do something that is a wellness benefit, et cetera. We've also had a bingo card approach, which is to say, everyone has to do at least a few things. And one of those bingo card strategies has been to help people use spaces that they wouldn't have thought would work for something. So people think, I'm going to have a meeting in a meeting room, and I'm going to have heads down in a phone booth. And so we get them to mix and match and say, try to do this activity in this space or this activity in this space, so that they can really test and experiment. And then maybe last in this category is I've seen a number of organizations. I know that this isn't in the office, but maybe bringing the office outdoors and going for walks in nature, getting out and about. I think that's just one more thing that will have an advantage. I know, LJ, your real estate is maybe a little urban for that, but where we can get out into the woods together, I think that's another great way of amplifying culture and bringing people together in space.
Yes, and I think something to add to this, and Melissa and I were talking about this for Office Space, but we recently opened a new Atlanta hub, and we were really intentional with site selection. We're in a co-working space. It's right on the Beltline, so we've got access right outside our doors to water, to green space, to a walking trail, to locally owned restaurants and coffee shops. And we wanted to be here for the purpose of helping draw people in. So everything we've talked about today, there's an outdoor roof space that comes with our lease that we can activate. We can also work outside, and Wi-Fi exists out there. They've got really neat programming inside a portal. So it's a great technological experience. And you can see what the menu is, which I understand, like maybe we don't want to over index into the calories, but we walked in this morning and there was pumpkin oatmeal with all of the fixings, in a crock pot. And it really does feel like community. And so I know we only have a couple minutes left, but I do want to answer a few more questions if we can. Jennifer Monahan tuned in and asked if we can get a copy of this recorded meeting. Absolutely. We will share this with you afterwards. And then what are some examples of retrofits you recommend for physical space within a building that wasn't designed or built with occupant health and comfort in mind? How might you go about deciding? And I think the example you shared with me yesterday might be really fun, Melissa, but how might you go about deciding which retrofits provide the most value or ROI in the long run? So there's like three questions.
Yeah, I think that's hard without knowing the space. And if the person who's asking wants to reach out, I'd be happy to give some peer review and some opinion once we've got it. One of the pieces I would say is finding ways to give people discretion and control over their environment. There is a lot of the world around us which visually tells us to sit down and shut up, whether it's from oversized chairs that you literally couldn't move if you wanted to all sorts of, names on doors, right? There are so many things about the physical environment that tell us what to do. And I think, first of all, getting rid of those things that are bossing us around, and then also engaging and enabling people, letting them know that they are welcome to move things around or push things around, and then kind of, Heather, you mentioned it, looking at the results of that. So I would say that's one end of the spectrum. The other is just from a science perspective, daylight, daylight, daylight. One of the things that really leaves us feeling worse at the end of the day than better at the end of the day is daylight. Fresh air is pretty well accommodated in most buildings, and physical movement, really having an excuse to move from one space to another. Sit to stand desks do not need to be a new purchase. They can be an add-on, something that literally goes up and down, or bring in some cocktail tables that are at that height. There's so much that can be done. I think of it as like hacking the office, and that we should really focus on movement, daylight, and getting people to be in control of their own environments.
It sounds like all the ingredients that are required to help make healthy humans. So I love that. We have one more
Good.
question, and we've got one more minute left, but definitely would like to again thank everybody for tuning in. Melissa Marsh is the co-founder of Plastarc. She's based in New York. She is an incredible advisor. She's got a brilliant team, and they would love to help you transform your workplace and make it a place of purpose and passion and productivity that's designed with humans at the center of all of that. And also for us at OfficeSpace, we're just so honored to be here and helping provide technology for the future of work and providing data and insights so that teams can make better decisions faster about their people, places, and portfolios. So the last question is, How about the 3-day in the office workplace? How are organizations accommodating the footprint? We have employees coming in once a week, most come in 3 days a week, and there's a small amount that come in 5 days a week. Any thoughts on best practices for space management with the different levels of in-office space management? So we've got folks 1, 3, and 5 days a week, and how do we organize all of that? We've got perspectives on that as Office Space, and Melissa, I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, again, another one that's hard to answer in abstraction, but I would focus on the core of what is it that people are coming together for, and making sure that you don't have a situation where people that would really have advantage of spending time together are kind of missing out because of that individual schedule. And then this is kind of wild and crazy, but I also think that we could look at 6 days, and some people coming in 3 of those days, some people coming in a different three. I believe there is a future of co-working between companies. So
Agree.
no reason, just like we've got roommates in our domestic lives, why not have roommates in our corporate lives? And if you've got a Monday, Wednesday, Friday crew, go find an organization with a Tuesday, Thursday crew and think totally differently about how you're using that space.
I've actually worked in a company where we did just that, and it's fantastic because the networking and the team building that happens, and sometimes there were overlap days, and it was great. And also, I think Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, we wanted to feel like we were also not being wasteful about this physical space, and we saw that it was being better utilized when two smaller teams came together in this shared space. The other thing we can say from an office space perspective, and then we'll go ahead and close things out, but is that when you have technology like Office Space, and there are others out there on the market as well, you can identify the number of employees that you have by kind of schedule type and plan your space accordingly, and also do really creative things with your desks. And we call it desk lending, or we have desk banks, so that you can have one-to-one assigned seating, but create more flexibility and higher sharing ratios so that if the person who's normally there 5 days a week isn't there, and if it's something they're, open to, then they can, return their desk to the desk bank and somebody else can check it out for the day and things like that. So having a system or a tool to help you orchestrate and operate all of that is definitely possible. So you have tuned into 2025 Hybrid Trends with Melissa Marsh from Plastarc. I'm Heather Larrabee from OfficeSpace Software. Let's continue the conversation. Please look for this recording in your inbox. Thanks for sharing your feedback with us on LinkedIn or via email. Please do reach out to Melissa and team. We'll be sure that you have her contact information as we send this recording out. And we are here to serve and support and to help teams find what I like to say their way to hybrid happiness. And we're signing
Awesome.
off.
Thank you, Heather. Really
Thanks,
appreciate
Melissa.
it.
Enjoy the rest of your conference.
Absolutely. Take
All right.
care.
Take care. Bye.